Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel Nonconformist Conscience. And I am here with my friend Stacie Pazura again, so we can talk about this Sagittarius new moon, excuse me. And me and Stacie were kind of thinking about, you know, how we wanted to incorporate part of the Sag archetype that isn't talked about very often, and that is the Daemon archetype. And if you look at Stacie, she has on her shoulder her bird, her African gray Bella, and then on her side, she has her Great Dane, Sam. And a big part of the Daemon archetype is our connection with nature and viewing all of nature as sentient life. I was going to have my little critters in my office, but they did not want to come into the cold. So, but luckily, Bella and Sam are here with us. And I thought I would let Stacie speak about the Daemon archetype a little bit since it pertains to Sag. And then we will jump into this Sagittarius new moon chart and break it down. We're going to give a personal lens to it, and then we're also going to give a collective lens to it. And I'm really excited for us to talk about this new moon. So, Stacie, take it away.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, the Daemon archetype is something very sacred to me. Um, there's X amount of souls on the planet who are whose soul type is Daemon, which means that there is a tendency to relate to plants and animals maybe more than other people, other humans. And it's a really important point because it's a very different experience relating with a human versus an animal. Animals are just so straightforward. I mean, sometimes they can create behaviors, they can posture sometimes, but really in the end, they're just so natural, and what you see is what you get. And they don't have the self-consciousness that are you talking that humans can kind of get lost in sometimes. But it is a very unassuming and simple way of life. It's refreshing. It's just so simple. And like I don't have to, like if I come home and I look like ass, Bella is still gonna love me just as much. There's no judgment, there's nothing like that, there's nothing pretentious about it. And I feel like that is really an important thing that humans can take from animals. I mean, I feel like animals are one of the most sacred things on this planet. They put so much trust into us. I mean, they really do. They trust us with their bodies, with their living experience. And they don't have voices to like complain, so you've really got to use your intuition, which is a Jupiter phenomena. So it's a good exercise to really commune with nature when you can relate to an animal as much as you can a human.
Yeah, I loved whenever I first started learning evolutionary astrology, the Daemon archetype really stood out to me because it gave me language for my own personal experiences of being in nature growing up. I can be, vulnerable. Growing up was not a happy time, just because of what I chose to come into and deal with in this lifetime. And the thing that really helped ground me and understand who I was as a child was being out in nature. So much so, I would like fall asleep out there. I would just learn so much from observing nature. And that is definitely something we see with the Daemon archetype, because it's a soul whose consciousness is infused with the totality of nature, is how EA views this and how Jeffrey Wolf Green taught it. And so there's an ability to really be able to connect with that pure consciousness of animals and plants. You know, I was the kid who had rocks in my pockets, and like you know, my mom growing up, I had a dog in the backyard and a dog in my house. And my mom would like see me as a little girl talking to our big Rottweiler, and she would be like, "What are you saying to him?" His name was John. And I would just be like, "I'm telling him my secrets," like, you know. And I would make sure that we get him treats because I promised him that. And like, we had, you know, a companionship. And then my first real awareness of death was revolving around my dog Max, who I was extremely close with. And you know, animals can come back to us too, as the same soul. And I think that that's something that's really cool, because I definitely think that my dog Dexter is that soul in this lifetime. He does a lot of the same things that my dog Max did. So I love this archetype because I feel like if you're a Daemon soul, you know, you're going to have a lot of the mutable axis in your chart, you know, whether it be by sign or by house. And so there can be this sensitivity even to others, you know, and this compassion to others. There's this sense of justice, I feel like, that happens within the Daemon archetype, of really understanding the natural law, which is also Sag, of everyone being equal, no matter where we're at. And so if you take that even further, Daemon's view all life as equal. We know that everyone has its own specific function within the world, and we don't look at, you know, the things that grow in marshes as any different than us. We know that it serves a purpose, and if that goes away, that it can affect us even as humans. So we see it, you know, everywhere. And so I feel like Daemons really have this understanding of you know, knowing that everything has its place and that it's all rooted in equality. It's an equitable relationship. So yeah.
That is so well said. I mean, it really is, as far as the equality goes. I mean, you already said this, so I'm sort of restating it, but within the web of life, um, every little thing has a purpose. Everything that keeps the web strong and sustainable. And it's like, if one species goes down, it'll affect another species. And that's just a lesson for us, you know, looking at a collective standpoint, you know, that we should treat each other the same way, you know, because animals do, they know how to do that. I mean, there is a food chain, which I don't love the food chain, but it's, you know, it's a natural part of life. And I don't know, but um yeah, so it definitely, because natural law is about giving, sharing, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look out into nature, it's like every species finds a niche, you know, and it does a productive job for all of us. Oh gosh,
Well, it pulls
I
in
gotta
part of that Virgo axis. It has a specific purpose of being of service, no matter what it is, whether it's a plant, animal, a mineral, it's all sentient, and it all serves a Virgo-like purpose of, of helping us. So if one, it makes me think of how everyone started to, and I was excited about this a few years ago, how everyone started to really get into understanding this with bees and the monarchs, and understanding that if one of those goes away, that it's going to affect us. And the only part that makes me sad about this is that people didn't realize that before, but that's because we live in a culture and in societies that don't value that. And so a daemon is going to have a strong sense of valuing that and understanding that. I also feel like, and this will pull in the new moon once we start talking about it, but just this archetype in general and natural law, but with daemons, there's an ability that I find for myself and for others, I've heard you share similar things, is that we learn so much from just observing nature. It can reveal a lot about our own personal truths, and then it can also just reveal natural truths. I think I told you one time I was reflecting on the archetype of Gemini and how classification can how we structure things through classifying them and labeling them can actually create a disconnect. And I was really pondering this, and I was sitting outside, and then all of a sudden I have a bunch of old trees in my backyard, and all the birds were chirping, and then all of a sudden they got quiet at the same time, and then they all got and started moving together as one. And it's because there's just not that separation. And that was so Gemini too, to be thinking about the archetype of Gemini, and then birds teaching me this lesson just through observing them about, what, definition can do and what it and what it can't, So I thought that was really cool.
Well, and I appreciate that story because I had a similar experience. I remember it was like my second year in college, and I had a anthropology assignment to do some kind of essay, and I remember I was just troubled emotionally at the time, and so I went to a park and like rolled into a parking spot and was just looking at the surroundings, and there was this funky tree. It was like it wasn't growing correctly. It was all tilted, and it was like, but the thing that I noticed is that all the wildlife was flocking to that tree. And I was like, that is a lesson. That is a lesson. Like, be authentic, be who you are. Like, if you offer it, they will come. And it just had it among all the other perfectly manicured trees, this one had the most life. So I think that's another important lesson about.
That's beautiful. And it reminds me of Jupiter and Taurus right now, quite frankly. There was one other thing that I wanted to say about the Daemon archetype before we get into this new moon is, I think for a lot of daemons, there can be misunderstandings about them because they can appear, they're so rooted in something that is so against what society and culture is right now, so that there can be an immense amount of just not understanding who these souls are, really being viewed as when I was little, I was viewed as like a weird kid, that was what I heard, was I was weird and intense. But that's got to be my Scorpio, I think. But it was because I would much rather be hanging out in my room with my animals than dealing with people. And so a lot would get projected onto me. And I find whenever I work with other people who I get the sense are daemons and a chart is really reflecting that, they always have these kind of stories of really being misunderstood. And it's because, you know, they are connected to something that isn't as tangible in this world, and and it's because of the conditioning that's going around. So it's something I wanted to point out a little bit and talk about, and to heal that dynamic. There are reasons why souls will come in and experience that, and oftentimes I find through observing this and then through my own stuff is it's about recovering our own natural truths, which is also a Jupiter Sag function of, really wanting to understand oneself and to recover who we are in a natural sense and our own intelligence from being soul-centered and honoring that part about us. So yeah, a lot of it's that. So a great way to recover that, and in EA it's talked about, is just sitting in nature.
It is. And I mean, part of the disconnect there is the fact that we're living in a patriarchal reality, which is man-made law. Stop that. It's man-made law. So man is creating structures and beliefs and systems, and sometimes it just doesn't jive with what is natural. And this is where the alienation can come in for a daemon, because you truly are not interested in the man-made stuff.
No, you're not. I mean, yeah.
And it's a gift. It may be alienating at times, if you're around human people, I guess, who are not also defined in the same way. But it sure is like it's a definite relief. Like, I don't know where I would be if I did not have animal connections. Bless you.
Thank you. Oh yeah, no, me neither. And I feel like with mine are all rescues of some sort. I have 3. I have a miniature schnauzer, Chloe. I have my dog Dexter, who, yes, 1,000%. And I have my Sphinx. His name is Rin. But my dog Dexter, I remember one day I was going through a lot of turmoil, and talk about just a soul calling. I was driving and there was the ASPCA, and it was like it's like on this corner, and I was about to turn, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna go in there and I just want to sit with the animals. And I had no intention of getting one. I already had one. And he was the last dog I came to, and he's not the prettiest aesthetically, none of that. But I went into the room he was at, and when he looked at me, I was like, oh, I've known you before. And he got up and he literally hugged me. He put his arms around me. And when I went to shut the door, he came up and he did that again. And I was like, I'm taking him home. And he's been my dog ever since. And I've had him, for 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. And he's been through some of the hardest times in my life. And
yeah,
I remember whenever I got married, at first my partner was like, I don't sleep with dogs in the bed. And I was like a true Daemon. I was like, well, he was here before you. So like, I had no problem stating like, I will choose my dog over anyone. So, well,
100%.
I feel like we could talk about this archetype. It's one of my favorites. So let me get into sharing this so we can both talk about it. There we go. So I'll speak a little bit to this, and then Stacie, we'll just ping pong back and forth like how we do. I do think it's interesting, before I go into this, on a personal level, for people who like to apply this to their own natal chart, is that when we're dealing with the Sagittarius dynamic and we're dealing with natural law, this is a new moon. We have the oh my gosh, the summit going on right now. It's falling out of my mind. Stacie, help me with my words here.
Climate summit in Dubai, right?
Yes. And so what's going on is they have been, I'm sure a lot of people who watch this do know this, but this is very fitting for this new moon that this is going on. They're talking about climate change and wanting to bring awareness to it and wanting to understand how this is affecting us and trying to do things that could help with global warming. More will be revealed as to what they come up with. We all know that this is a really big thing going on. It was the hottest year recorded in history. And whenever we're just looking at Pluto in general, even without this new moon's great for the timing of the summit, the climate summit. But when we're looking at Pluto in Capricorn and it's squaring these nodes, and we're looking at Pluto being ruled by Saturn and Pisces. This is about the dissolving of man-made structures and the reality of really needing to do something different and to look at man-made structures and see how these man-made structures are affecting how we treat this beautiful earth that we live on. And so what we see with Pluto squaring the nodes, especially with the resolution being the South Node in Libra, is all of the imbalances right now that have been created from societal structures and how we've treated our relationship, Libra, with the earth. You think about the South Node, it's ruled by Venus. We've also got Uranus and Jupiter and Taurus ruled by Venus as well during this whole time that these nodes have been in these signs with Pluto square them. And so we're looking at the beliefs stemming from conditioning, that's pulling in the Jupiter, dealing with man-made laws that are affecting and creating imbalances with our relationship to Gaia, to Earth, the land that we live on, Taurus, and how it's creating trauma, Uranus and Taurus retrograde. And so this is a time for review and revision in order to resolve this. But with the South Node and Libra, it takes an extreme to counteract an extreme sometimes. And so we're now seeing the extremes, and the extremes are going to continue to be highlighted until we do something to counteract them. So on a humanitarian level, Uranus, Taurus, what are we going to do as a collective in order to bring balance and harmony back in to how we treat our relationship with Earth right now? And so if we're just looking at those symbols and involved with this chart, we can see that this is it's a great time to be having this summit. It's really needed. And so, hopefully something gets done about this until because I would hate for the nodes to shift into Virgo and Pisces and to see what crisis come from us not dealing with these imbalances.
For sure. And not to over focus on the Daemon archetype, but this is one of the reasons that Daemon souls exist. We don't just come here to enjoy ourselves, like we're here for a service, like you were kind of mentioning earlier. And that service is to demonstrate what the value of life is, because in a man-made structure, in a patriarchal man-made structure, there's hierarchies, right? And then you get into all kinds of distortion when you go there. In natural law, everything is equal and complete, and if one thing is suffering, then it's like it's a totality, and with patriarchal reality, it's difficult to connect all the different parts, you know, because of the thinking structure. And so yeah, and so this summit is like absolutely overdue, absolutely overdue. I wish there were so much more progress in terms of nature and climate protection, you know, nature protection and climate, and but you know, we have to work with what we've got. And so this is a very good thing that leaders from prominent countries are coming together to talk about the reality of it. There's a lot of people who don't believe in it. They think it's a hoax.
Yeah.
Which to me, I can't even grasp the rationale there.
Mm-hmm.
Because literally, like, if you are used to having 90-degree days and then suddenly your climate is 100-degree days, it changes your life, and it changes the life for every species. And we have got to get in our human brains that we've got to work together. This is a whole. It's not just people, it's not just animals, it's not just landscape, you know, it's we are all combined, and we have to be responsible for each other when we can be.
Absolutely. I mean, and not to just completely continuously talk about this the whole time, but I mean, I think it's worth mentioning if we're looking at this new moon, the new moon falls in the sixth house. Like, if we're looking at this on a collective level, I ran this chart for Greenwich, and it's the same. So it's, you know, this is for the whole globe. Um, you know, a new moon and Jupiter, ruled by Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. And that Jupiter is in a full phase opposition to this Venus and Scorpio. And so we're looking at something's reached a limit on a collective level pertaining to how we distribute natural resources and how that stems from beliefs about how we're supposed to be distributing natural resources. This is seen with the beliefs part is the Jupiter, the Taurus is natural resources, and then Venus also pulls in because it's a ruler of Taurus, but it's in Scorpio. So there needs to be this recommitment to getting to the bottom of how we have, what are our motivations, Scorpio, our hidden motivations behind using natural resources. Where is this reaching a limit, and why, Scorpio? Why is this going on? What needs to be thrown off? What needs to be resolved and opposed and liberated from? Because this is this, you know, retrograde phenomenon happening here. So it gives us an opportunity on a collective level to really objectify and observe this and to get to the bottom of it. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to see these imbalances highlighted, and they're just going to get deeper and more, you know, more extreme. So,
and another way to put that, one of the things that Jeffrey Wolf Green has taught a lot about is sort of the human reaction to evolutionary necessity. Sometimes we don't do it unless, like, we have to, right? And so that could be another symbol of that Jupiter and Taurus. It's survival necessity. And that's unfortunately a pattern that does exist in this society. We don't tackle things until it's like emergency. So you know, and so there's that inconjunct,
yes.
you know, coming from the new moon to Jupiter, which is adjustment.
Yes, to Uranus. Sorry.
What?
To Uranus.
Oh,
correct?
Okay. No. I'm looking at Jupiter. Am I looking at the same chart? Stop it.
Yeah. it's Uranus in conjunct the new
Oh,
moon.
I'm sorry. I get confused with the colors. I'm
No, I
color.
know. That's how I am. And you were talking about it earlier, so
Yeah.
but yes, the readjustment, continue on. Sorry, I just didn't want to confuse people on
No,
here.
thank you for catching that. Thank you.
No
Like
problem.
I say, I will forever admit that my left brain is quirky.
No, we both have each other's backs on here, so
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's all about adjustment. It's all about getting down to the simple things, the
mhm.
basics, survival. And that doesn't mean survival without the emotion. It's like, let's get, because, and the thing I think about is like, I had an interest in near death experiences, before, and did some, watch some things on it. And every time they say the things that you think are important in your human body just end up being inconsequential. It's the simple things. It's the simple things. And so this is our chance to like really get to the bottom of that. And with the new moon, I mean, this is the beautiful thing about a new moon is it's a fertile moment to seed something. And one thing I really like about Sagittarius and Jupiter is levity, right? Happiness. Like this is a good time to plant some kind of seed that is focused on what is going to make you happy, what is going to bring joy to your heart, what is going to make you more inclusive towards others. Um, and so that's one of the opportunities we have here.
I love that. I also feel like another opportunity that we have, just going back to you talking about that Uranus in conjunct the new moon, is this can be an opportunity for community to come together right now, seeing as it's Uranus. Like, what can we do? Like, Uranus makes me think of humanity and your tribe or your friends, but on a global level, it's the collective, and so it's like, what are we wanting to look at and get back in touch with pertaining to natural law right now, Sag? What, in order to come together as a community, as global citizens, to really help with what's going on in the world right now. Um,
Yeah,
I
and
think
Uranus is also lifestyle, right?
totally.
Like one of
Yes.
the key things that we need to address. And so it is helpful when different representatives of different social groupings can come together, talk about it. As long as everyone is acknowledging the basic truth, we can get somewhere, you know?
Yes. I love that you pointed that out. I see, this is why I love whenever we do this or we just talk in general, is because I learn so much from what you it helps me understand archetypes on a deeper level. So because I wasn't even thinking of that, but on personal levels, I think with what I've been looking at with this new moon is this is really an opportunity for us to get in touch with our natural truths, like the core of who we are. Um, and if we're pulling in Jupiter and it's, opposing Venus, we talked about that a little bit on a collective level, but on a personal level, it's like getting to the bottom of what our personal values are. Are they stemming from conditioning, or are we really getting in touch with the essence of our soul nature, of what is true for me, not what when I was little someone told me to do, not what I decided to buy into at some point in time. It's like really wanting us to get to the core. And also I feel like with this opposition, this is also, really wanting to pay attention to our inner voice and how we talk to ourselves and how our beliefs have affected the way that we talk to ourselves. Is this putting us in a position to where we can experience ourselves in an authentic, Sag, Jupiter, an authentic way? So that's what I mean whenever I'm talking about natural truths. This is really about, who are you on an authentic level? What are you seeing right now that could be preventing you from looking at this Uranus in conjunct this new moon on a personal level? What can be preventing you from vibrating in a different way to where you need to readjust by getting in touch with your relationship to yourself, Taurus? What thoughts are repeating? I love Stacie described this to me and I hadn't ever heard it. I've always really conceptualized Uranus as this can be like repeating thoughts that are like kind of like it's our higher intelligence that's saying, hey, it's knocking on the door saying you need to do something here. But me and Stacie were having a talk just as friends the other day, and I kept repeating something to her, and I've been repeating it. She was like, girl, that's that Uranus drumbeat. You need to listen to that. And so this can be that, if there is something that is repeating right now pertaining to you and your relationship to yourself, because Uranus and Taurus is about a radical transformation of our relationship to self. This is a time to readjust and to refine and to self-improve by getting in touch with what feels authentic, what needs to be liberated from, values, old needs that have been conditioned that are creating imbalances, so we can really focus on this can be a time of really needing to focus on self in order for that readjustment to come and self-refinement to happen, for us to reflect. And that, I mean, I'm kind of going all over the place here, but Venus is sextile Mercury. Mercury's going to station retrograde tomorrow. And Venus is our relationship with ourselves. On one hand, it's with other people, but we're seeing this opposition between Jupiter and Taurus and Venus. And then Venus is sextile a Mercury and Capricorn. Mercury in Capricorn wants us to make commitments to be integral or to be self-responsible. And it's going to be station retrograde tomorrow. So it's like on, coming out of this new moon, it's like this is going to be a time until January 1st for us to, whenever it stations direct again, to really reflect Capricorn. And seeing as this is ruled by Saturn and Pisces, reflect on what is wanting to dissolve right now in our lives on a relational level. What are we needing to get to the bottom of so this dissolving process can happen? If we're wanting to look at and expand upon what we already know, well, we need to take our Capricorn wisdom that's gained by direct experience, and in order to make new choices, we need to reflect right now and to use that as a stepping off place, to reconnect. So I could go on, so I'm going to let you talk. I'm sorry, but that's kind of what I'm picking up on here with this new moon.
I had 20 thoughts in my head and now I've got 0. Are you copying me?
Well, I have Jupiter on my ascendant, so I tend to interrupt people because that trines my Mercury. So I take no offense when people do that. I won't like jump in anytime.
But I don't want to take your train of thought because everything you're saying is like really, really valid and important. I don't know. Talk about something and I'll try and recapture this.
Okay. I mean,
you were talking about, okay, so Mercury, and in Capricorn, it's, stop it now. I'm gonna have to put her back. So, one kind of point is, we want to be responsible with our language. We want to try and be responsible with how we're linking things together, in regards to the betterment of society, because society is Capricorn.
Absolutely.
And it's maturity, and we've got some growing up to do.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, not only is Venus sextile Mercury, to me, this can help with conversations if we're needing to have them with other people. But Mars is, approaching this new moon. So with Mars, I always like to think of it's action, but there's a lesson in Mars, which is to be responsive instead of reactive. And I think with what I'm hearing you talk about with Mercury and Capricorn and the responsibleness in choosing our words is to really reflect on maybe what we need to say if we need to say something. And to be responsive instead of reactive. And that is a part of emotional maturity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And relative to Sag, the truth.
Yes.
We got to practice telling the truth because, it's kind of a thing to not be truthful in this patriarchal society. And with truth, truth is a journey of intuition, which is a Sag.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. And this is how we find that inner voice. It's like sometimes you just got to quiet down and just see what comes. So what if it's not connected to anything immediately? It's you'll receive guidance, you receive understanding. That's what intuition is. It's when you know something without knowing how you know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for me at least, that has been a completely central point of my own growth, is just letting that intuition go, and cooperating with it.
Mm-hmm. And that's beautiful. I love because if you look at Neptune, it's, in a square to this new moon. And so with Neptune, this is really, I love how it's connected to the saying of the whispers of our soul. If you're wanting to connect with your intuition, Sag, this can be a time during this new moon where you can start to really create self-reliance. Mercury here in Capricorn, and Jupiter, Taurus, that trine going on, pulling into this new moon of really listening to what is emanating from your soul. And even if you don't know what you know, like you just know that you know something without knowing why, to have trust in Neptune and Pisces, faith. That if you have a sincere intention and that you're honest and authentic, that you can act on that, even if it's scary. Maybe you're not someone who feels like you can be authentic in this world, right now. You feel really alienated from life. Other people have no problem with it. This can be a call to act on really having faith and trusting oneself and taking the action that is whispering and emanating from within us, our intuition. And then, this is just restated also with Jupiter being this ruler. And it's in Taurus, to really listen to the inner voice. What's being whispered to you? What are you, then you're honest. What is that drum beat that keeps repeating? What are you needing to do? And then the call is to act on faith and know that you might not get what you can't have an expectation about it, because we're still here learning about expectations, especially with the South Node in Libra. But if you have a sincere intention and you are being authentic and honest, you will be given what you need. If it's a conversation you're needing to have, or you're needing to reflect on something and be honest with yourself and then make a judgment call from that place, that, you can trust that your needs will be met. They might not be what you expect it to look like, but they will be met.
Yeah, and trust that it will lead to growth. And I love all the keywords that you just put into that. Like, that's so true. Authenticity, being honest, looking deep. Yeah, this is a really good time to do that. And I also want to like just kind of point out, like, Jupiter is retrograde. So whenever you have something retrograde, it's going to be an inverted process. So there's going to be some extra depth to looking into yourself. And it can be, going back to cover things that maybe we didn't cover thoroughly before. Maybe we have a new understanding now or to come. So, if it's like an old pattern that's coming back up again, like have faith that, okay, this time the dynamics are really working in favor of accelerating past that, because that's the whole point of listening to the drum beat. When you listen to the drum beat, it allows accelerated evolution.
Absolutely. One thing I did want to point out before we wrap up is Vesta is retrograde. It's in the sign of Cancer, and it is ruled by this moon in Sag. It is also in a trine to Saturn, and a wider trine, but still technically a trine to this Venus. And so there is a need to really latch on to devoting oneself to understanding our emotional makeup right now, using that Venus in this grand trine to get to the bottom of where we might have experienced loss, abandonment, betrayal, even of self. Okay, seeing as Venus is the ruler of the self node, and really getting to the core and having the courage to face oneself right now, and to understand and reflect on what is authentic and true for me, and to clear the clutter of others right now, not what you think you should be, what you should do, but what really grounding in what is it that you need to do for yourself and devote yourself to for your own personal healing. Because this is, Saturn and Pisces is a part of this as well. So it's really, this is helping us to restructure our consciousness right now by the willingness to dive into our emotional body, to devote ourselves to it, to get to the bottom of our, innermost vulnerable places where we can access our own natural truths right now, where we feel most authentic. And so I wanted to bring that up just a little bit, and then that pulls in that Neptune, because Saturn is ruled by Neptune. It's just these repeating signatures that are in this chart that are really restating to trust oneself, to trust your inner guidance, to face your inner fears, I would say, around maybe where you feel alienated, and seeing as this is a new moon, where you can show up authentically and with courage and say, I have a right to exist as my most natural, authentic self, and to really trust that process of knowing that everything will be given to you, that is supposed to be given to you if you do that.
Yeah, and I mean, just sort of to put a fine point on that, Venus, just to go back to a basic, Venus correlates to listening, right? Mercury is hearing, Venus is listening, and there's an inner and outer side of Venus. And so with all of this, with this Taurus that's really being emphasized, especially retrograde,
yes,
listening to yourself, listening to your intuition, listening.
Absolutely, because it can be a catalyst for evolutionary growth right now, for sure. So that is all the time we have. Let us know if you guys want us to talk more, or what other topics you would want to see in these videos pertaining to new moons and full moons. I know I'm open to it. I think you are too. I know that both Stacie and I love talking about what's going on in the world. I personally don't feel like it's talked about enough, and utilizing the archetypes of evolutionary astrology, I feel really passionate about it. It's one of the things that I love doing here in Oklahoma, is using its chart to teach people about Oklahoma. But if you are someone who really likes hearing more of what this is on the collective level and us pulling in current events, let us know. I enjoy it, but this is our public service. So if you want to hear more, let us know. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks. So
Full moon time.
full moon. Thank you guys.
Namaste.